Shaolin, now all I touch, I am a mastery here.
Right, okay, this is Cameron Jones. Is our filmer, our camera guy who's just done the Blue Skies videos for us. He has his own business, Oh Gosh Productions, and we're just going to have a basic chat with him about his life and inspiration, and then what his plans are for the future. So we'll start with the first question, Cam.
Cool.
Is kind of, when did you develop your interest in filming? And is that the way to say it? Filming?
Yeah, well, like filmmaking is like a general, like
Filmmaking.
more general term that kind of encompasses like all of it. I would say probably.
Yeah, we'll go with filmmaking then. And
Yeah.
how did that lead into you starting up your own business, Oh Gosh Productions?
Trying to think how to condense this down quickly because I'm not trying to go through the story of my life pretty much. The short version is basically like as a kid, I had a computer from a very young age. That led to an interest in computing and the internet rolling around and all the rest of it. And then from that, from gaming to learning how to video edit, to upload like what I'd done on gaming and stuff. And then that was a very short period in which I surpassed that completely. Couldn't care less about games anymore. In fact, I rarely get the chance to play games at all in the last few years. And it just developed into more of a fixation and obsession with just editing, creating effects, special effects of things, and like how that was impressive to people. And I suppose I got a bit of a kick out of that.
Yeah.
And then, and I'd always loved films, and it just seemed like the natural thing for me to, continue in that direction of my, make that my career basically. Because it was already an interest that I had just off my own, back teaching myself things from YouTube tutorials and, web articles and forums and all sorts. And just, it seemed that because I was doing that just voluntarily, why not, make that into my career? And it sort of just was always obvious, really. Not like most people, I would say. People find that quite weird when I tell them that. There was no big moment of, I wonder what I'm going to do. It was always quite clear. And then, from there, went to university after I left college, did sort of film stuff in college, went to university, did a year there doing a film course, and discovered that most of the people there were sort of just YouTubers and things like that.
I remember you telling me that. Me.
There was a lot of just like, vloggers and things. And I thought I was going to enter this whole realm of, people who were really passionate about the ways that stories are articulated and the complexities of, human nature and how that's expressed in film. And it was none of that really. It was mostly it was mostly the technical things that I'd already been able to teach myself.
Right,
up until then. And therefore it seemed a little bit redundant, being there. Not for everyone, but just for me it felt redundant. And at that point, I decided to leave after a year. I should say that was in London as well, so I moved back to Manchester after that. Carried on doing something that I'd started before I went to university, which was producing videos for corporate clients that I'd got through family connections, and sort of just pursued that as it was kind of really the only thing that I could do at the time, and got really enveloped in it, and just continued doing it, and I've just sort of carried on doing that ever since. So
yeah, man. Yeah, it's good.
That's the long and short.
It's mad the part that you say you go to uni. Obviously, you want to develop your, like you say, your storytelling in film and stuff like that, and then it's just kind of, it's the new generation of YouTubers that are clouding that out and stuff like that. I suppose. It's good. It's a great tool to have. Like, people are using that as a profession now, which is fine, because people talk about interesting things and stuff. But like, how do you start then? Just like, was it just gradually into starting a business, or did you find it difficult at first, or was it just once you had these clients, it was just kind of like, no, I might as well set this up and have this as a business now, and this is what I'm kind of going to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of was more born of necessity at first, because the first client that I dealt with properly was Aperol, and I think that was I say dealt with, that was more to do with it was more of a favor, but you know, they were technically my first client, and I think I was 16 when I did that. And so I was filming a activation event in Manchester, and I actually wasn't even old enough to drink at the time, and it was for Aperol Spritz. And the reason for really setting the business up wasn't so much because I'd had the idea organically, as much as it was I needed a way to invoice the company.
Right.
And that's felt like the most natural way was to do it under a company name. That's what I'd been advised to do. And then I kind of already had it at that point. Not I hadn't set the company up with Company's House or anything at that point. But at that point it was already, you know, in existence, I suppose. And then from there, that's the name that I continued to use for other clients that I got off the back of that. And it's sort of just, you know, then I officialized all of it with all, you know, Company's House and tax and all the rest of it. And yeah, now it's a company technically.
Right.
So yeah.
Do you? So I think we've spoke about this before, but for anyone who hasn't, it's like, so do you do the corporate stuff? But obviously we met through you filming band stuff at Jimmy's opening on it. So you were filming that whole night. Well, I suppose this was still for the business opening, wasn't it? But you were filming the band as well.
Yeah.
What kind of side of it do you prefer? Do you like filming the corporate stuff, or do you prefer being involved in the music side or the story making? What's your kind of...
The corporate stuff is I mean, at the end of the day, the corporate stuff is, you know, it's where the money is, and that's ultimately what drives that. However, you know, there are benefits to doing corporate things. One of those being that, you know, you are simply you're working on an already very strict idea of what needs to be made, and therefore that can be quite... You'll know this coming from, you know, a creative perspective. Sometimes the amount of limitations there are on something actually makes it easier to deal with as a creative project. If you have the prospect of doing whatever you want, that then becomes quite challenging to have to narrow down what it is that you actually want to do. So yeah, in that sense, doing stuff for clients is kind of nice because I don't have to, you know, it's very simple. It's, you know, an event here or it's an advertisement there, and there's already a brand defined that the brand is going to be represented by, so there's no confusion about how, you know, that brand needs to be represented, or it's, you know, hopefully there shouldn't be, and that's nice sometimes, but you know, ultimately to push yourself, you need to take away some of those limitations and try and explore ways of, you know, creating things that are, you know, a bit more original and a bit more expressive, and that's where the more creative side comes in. So there's benefits to doing both, but definitely in terms of growth as a filmmaker, the area that I want to pursue more is definitely the sort of more artistic area. You know,
because you're into script writing and stuff like that as well, like, and visual storytelling, like we spoke about before, and that.
And that's that's the thing that I actually wanted to get out of, I should say, university. Was this technical stuff of how to work, you know, how to create even just quite complex effects of explosions and things like that, and you know, the piecing together of footage and all the technical stuff, how to work a camera. That never was difficult to me, because that was just a case of finding the information and applying it and absorbing it. And it's all just very straightforward terms, and, you know, it's very, I don't know what the word is, academic, I suppose. It's almost mathematical in a way. What always mystified me was the concept of story and narrative, and how it's, you know, there is a bit of a science to it, but it's not a definite science. It's very elusive. People do it differently in different ways. Some people completely throw it out, and that was always, there was never much online, put it that way, that explained that side of it. And I always knew that film ultimately, you know, was about it didn't matter what you shot the thing on. It didn't matter how many effects were in it or whatever. If the story and the idea wasn't there, and it wasn't, even if the idea was there, if it wasn't expressed properly, through the narrative structure, it was a bit like pointless.
Yeah,
So that's what I really wanted to learn at university, and there wasn't really much of that at all. And that was the most disappointing bit.
I think you can get a lot of that. I don't like. I never went to university or anything. I'd have loved to have gone to something like film school and stuff like that. But I always feel that they can give you the sort of basic outline of things and stuff, but they can never really teach what experience can teach you. Through life and stuff like that. So you kind of learning daily as you're going along here, and these deep meanings to things and stuff like that. And obviously, when we came to you with Blue Skies and stuff, we had this idea, this world that we wanted to create and stuff like that. So we had quite long discussions around that, and we had a few ideas of how we were going to do it. We spoke a lot about our inspirations and stuff and who we like. But like, who as a film, so moving towards a filmmaker side of things, who do you look to for inspiration, and what films are you watching, or is there particular editors or cinematographer people that you're studying their work and thinking, I'd love to apply that into my own and stuff?
Yeah, I actually am finding more and more in terms of recent inspiration for things in filmmaking. I'm actually finding more and more being more inspired by techniques and things I'm seeing in TV more often. That doesn't say that's not to say that there's not a lot of films that have inspired me, but recently I've just really noticed there's a lot of experimentation and kind of like forward thinking happening in TV, and that's probably just due to the amount of money that's being piled into it by Netflix and Amazon and all these other streaming services. But in terms of original, who I would cite as being my the people that really got me into film and looking at it as an art form as opposed to just sort of entertainment, directors like Ridley Scott. Alien has to be up there. It's probably one of my favorite films.
Incredible.
David Fincher.
Yes.
Social Network. They're all I mean, and anyone who watches those, it's immediately obvious that they're doing something very different than merely entertaining. There's an absolute art there.
Well, Social Network, we had Aaron Sorkin as well. He wrote the script, didn't he, for that? So it's Fincher and Sorkin. It's kind of like the two masters are there, field together. So that film would have struggled to fail, really, with them two charges.
Absolutely. And so Fincher with Scott. I love the guy who directed Arrival and the second Blade Runner. His name is eluding me right now. He's a French Canadian. It'll come to me at some point this afternoon.
was it the new Blade Runner?
Yeah, the new one. Yeah.
It wasn't Rian Johnson, was it?
It is. I don't know. It's Doom Maiden.
You getting up there, Ryan?
Yeah, I'll do the Jamie from.
Pull it up. I was going to say. But so those guys. I can't tell you how many times I've probably watched Social Network.
Oh man, yeah. I think did we watch it together? Sure, when we were having a Blue Skies thing, or was it?
I think we might have watched a bit of it together. Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Definitely, we had a few conversations about that. With you saying that TV is kind of inspiring you more at the minute, that's interesting to say, because the thing I'm finding with TV, when I've been learning about script writing and stuff like that, and kind of when you said before about talking about ideas, having to condense them down and stuff like that, and that's true. But with TV, it's kind of, you have a wider berth given to you. It's kind of, your ideas can play out over a longer space of time, can't they? Whereas with film, you stuck to, say, 3 hours being the max. Over a series, you can do 19 hours worth of stuff, so you can go really into depth with characters, really into depth with the story. So that's why it interests me in that way, where it's you can really go into the meaning of it here and stuff like that. So
and in some ways, the fact that even though you have got more time, to actually play something out with TV, it doesn't negate the fact that you only will have people's attention still for an hour an episode. So there still needs to be just as much as there would be in a film that's moving in order to keep the audience's attention. So in that way, it's sometimes more impressive because you have to move at the rate of a film in order to keep the attention. but you have to then also have somewhere to go with it after the episode has ended. So you can't exhaust all your possibilities of, you know, of the world, because then you've got nowhere to go. An example of a show that's probably my favourite series of all time that does that really well is Mad Men.
Mad Men, you see, I'm still on episode 8 of that, mate, and I've been on episode 8 for about 5 years. I've loved it, but then for some reason I just keep getting distracted from it. But everyone it keeps mentioning that Mad Men, that I need to watch Mad Men. So I'm going to make it a bit of a priority on my watch list, I think. But
yeah, you definitely should do. In fact, I wish I'd told you a bit earlier, because they've just taken it off Netflix.
Great.
Yeah. I imagine it'll pop up somewhere else. But yeah, that's an amazing example of just an amazing piece of writing from start to finish.
Have you seen that, Ryan? Have you seen Mad Men?
No, I haven't actually. No,
I'm still searching.
No,
he's engrossed in IMDb.
I found the guy's name, and embarrassingly, I don't know how to pronounce his surname. It's called Dennis Villeneuve.
I'm just Villeneuve. I think it's Villeneuve.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So
he did Prisoners as well, which is a great film. And
Prisoners is brilliant, man. I love Prisoners.
Yeah. It's his style is very like Fincher, in that kind of minimal, sort of very focused.
In my head, Fincher did Prisoners, but he didn't, because it's the aesthetic of it all and stuff like that, and the kind of
they're similar, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So we obviously had this mad idea around doing Blue Skies and stuff like that. We'd had a couple of meetings up. We had a narrative down. I think it was either the night before lockdown or it was around that time. We went into town. We tried to do whatever we tried to do. Yeah. Got pulled over by the police from a car because we had a camera out the roof of the car, which is funny because they were just more interested in what we were doing, weren't they? That's what they were.
They did. They were very polite. They weren't causing any trouble.
Being very nosy. So then obviously lockdown got announced, and then that idea went completely out the window. And then I think we went quiet for maybe a couple of weeks, and then I think you came to us and said you had an idea or something to do. And you made a little, is it called like a show reel or something of things that you...
I put together like a little kind of like a proof of concept type thing.
Proof of concept, that's
it was kind of just stolen from other videos and, you know, shots of things and stuff.
It's not that far from what you actually got in the end as well, which was good, yeah. So then you came to us, you wanted to hire a drone, which you got funny stories around, and you just had basically this idea of, you took the sentiment of the track and then just went, this is maybe how it's making me feel. Yeah. Should we do it like this? And we were just like, mate, yes, we fully trust you. You just go for it. We like the idea that you've sent us and stuff like that. And then you went away. So how was that process and stuff like that? You were stuck in lockdown, but you still managed to create something that told a story. Yeah. And was very inspiring to me just to watch it and stuff like that. And it did match up with the song. But what was the influence? What was the thought behind it? And are you happy with it, basically?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can't. I can't. It's difficult to pin down where it kind of where the idea kind of arose, but I suppose it was really a child of circumstance, really, because there wasn't very much that was possible. And like I said before about the idea of limitations on, you know, the creative process, that actually in some ways made it easier, because there's, you know, you don't have everything to choose from. You've got a limited places you can film. We couldn't have, you know, people together. That, you know, it would be very difficult to organize any kind of shoot that had anyone on any kind of a set. But that seemed to somehow just perfectly align with the way that the song made you feel when you listened to it, which was the verses being very sparse and quite sort of reflective.
Yeah, he's quite nostalgic as well.
Yeah, quite like sparse and reflective, which is obviously, you know, the shots during the verses in the video mirror that, you know, contrasted against the very heavy kind of inspirational movement of the chorus. And yeah, I'd wanted to work with a drone for a while. I'd started getting into watching a lot of like FPV drone videos.
What are them, mate?
So FPV is first person. Well, yeah, this was evidence of something that wasn't researched enough, because, and this is the story that you were saying before about the drones. So I was very interested in. I'd watched a lot of videos that used footage from what they call FPV drones, which is first person view. However, I naively, like most people, which I'm sure you've done probably in the realms of music, have just gone, yeah, I'll do that. I'll just make that. Having a bit of a grasp on filmmaking and and all the rest of it, and thinking that you know more than you do. I just went out and hired a bog standard, not bog standard, a pretty good drone, but very much a consumer drone, and therefore I hadn't realized that the footage that I'd been watching of these amazing visuals of, drones flying down cliff faces and, going through, fields and over water and all the rest of it, were filmed on something that basically you can't buy. You have to build the thing yourself from scratch. And I'm talking like the motors, the blades, the battery and everything. You have to build these things from scratch. There's no one will sell them to you. And I was going out trying to fly a consumer drone, which is covered in sensors that will scream at you the moment that you get near anything, trying to fly that, as though it were, a racing drone pretty much. And kind of, that was a big learning curve, definitely.
You did all right, mate. You did all right, considering. Like, I could imagine your face when you realised this out when you were out there, and it was like, oh my God, what am I going to do here? But, yeah, you got, because obviously, like what you're referring to is the footage that you sent us originally was I imagine done on these VPN drones, and then we were so made up with them, we were like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And then the stuff that you sent later, you sent it us without actually explaining to us that you had struggled with it, so we were kind of like, wow, we still managed to fucking pull this off. And it's like, obviously we were made up with the video and stuff. We were made up with it, like they told a story and that. Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the drone work, or was it just horrendous?
I mean, it depends. I think that the drone, it's something that I definitely immediately wanted to invest in myself. But it definitely is a very different type of. It's a very different skill set. The camera work of a drone is more to do with, dexterity of a controller than it is anything to do with cameras, aperture, anything like that. That's definitely more of a that's definitely not as important when it comes to flying a drone. And so it's something that I could probably pursue more, but it's one of those things that I probably would just entrust somebody who knows what they're doing a little bit better next time. I could definitely enjoy doing it, but I can just see myself it's one of those things that I actually immediately after was thinking, I was already looking at parts to build one of these things. Just think that would be all decked, and they're not very expensive either. You mount a GoPro to them and you can build them yourself, and then sort of realize this, if I do this is going to eat up a lot of time and energy. But it might just be easy to get in contact with somebody who's built their own, who knows how to fix it, they fly it for free, and who has been flying it for longer than I have, and to just work collaboratively with them. And that's a big part of filmmaking.
That's what interests me about the film world a lot, is the collaboration and stuff like that, and the building of the team and using people who are experts in certain fields and stuff like that. But that was good for that. So what is next for you, mate? What plans have you got for the future? And do you have any maybe advice to people who are thinking that they want to go into this kind of filmmaking land, and any little tips or anything like that you could give to people, just that they could take away?
I can speak for myself. So personally, my goals as a filmmaker are to explore every element of the medium that I can, in order to try and get some idea about what might be best to pursue as a more niche category of filmmaking. So whether that's documentary, music videos, narrative films, short films, there's a few more there that I've missed, but exploring each one of those properly, having had a go at each of them, and just putting my foot in the water of each of them really, and just seeing which one I'm kind of pulled more towards. Definitely, music videos are becoming like increasingly of interest to me. The range of things that you can do there, like you said, the collaboration happening not just between the filmmakers, who are producing the video, but also with the artists and the music is very interesting to me as well, because I'm a big, fan of lots of types of music. And it's also just interesting to work with artists in different mediums and just see, I got to figure out all the things that you guys had put into the work, your ideas around that. And for me to try and express that visually, it's just really, really rewarding to work, in a different, not a different field, but it's interesting to work with a whole set of different artists. Sometimes I think if you're working with, and you'll probably know this from being in bands, working with people who do something similar to you, they can sometimes do your head in a bit.
Yeah, it's going out into the kind of unknown is what we talk about a lot, and you learn so much when you're doing something that maybe I wasn't aware of this or anything like that. You just develop a new kind of way of being and stuff, and you see things from other people's perspectives and stuff like that. It's a really good way of learning, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, yeah. So that's my sort of personal goals at the minute, and then eventually it's to try and through doing that, build a portfolio that not only is broad in terms of the amount of work that's there, but in terms of also the different amount of experience that there is there. I think that at least if I'm looking at another director, I always find it more impressive if they've been able to execute direction over, music videos, adverts, and narrative films, which, somebody like we talked about before, David Fincher, Ridley Scott, they're both examples of that exact, thing. Both were started in advertisements, moved into music videos, and then eventually narrative films, and still occasionally dip back into doing those.
Yeah, man. I've saw a lot of. I think of examples of Fincher's music videos. Did he do some stuff with Kanye, or have I made that up?
I think the most recent one that David Fincher has done recently is the Suit and Tie for Justin Timberlake.
Right.
I think that's his most recent music video. But yeah, that's definitely more impressive to me to see a director that can execute, and has an understanding of very different types of video, rather than somebody who's just produced loads of, just music videos or just film. I think that's quite a narrow way.
Yeah. Just any advice you could give to someone who wants to go out and start filming, whether that just be to do it or where to study or where, how to get experience. I know it's maybe a broad question, but
it's the obvious answer always is just like, just do it. But more than that, I think that enjoy it and don't expect anything immediately from it. And I think that as I've gotten older, I've started to dip my toe into other areas of learning new things like music production, things like that. I realize how much of an opportunity it is when you're younger. You have the massive opportunity of being able to spend your time without necessarily expecting anything to come of it.
Yep.
And I think that's really important, because if you spend your time learning the fine details of whatever it is that you're interested in, but if we're talking about filmmaking, there's going to be a lot of time spent learning very basic things that aren't probably going to seem interesting at all, but they're going to ultimately be the things that provide the foundations for something that will become interesting. And the problem is, if you halt that learning prematurely because you don't expect, because you're not seeing any results, because you're not seeing that you're producing something exciting, or, you know, there's this whole idea of, you know, the reason that anyone gets into creating things is because they have great taste. And there's a whole video about that, and you've seen it. And the basic message of it is, I'm sure you'll have seen it. It's a really great video. I can't remember the guy's name. And the whole principle of the video is you get into making things because you have really great taste. And the problem is, for the first year, 2 years, whatever, probably 5 years that you're doing the thing, your taste can tell that what you're making isn't good. You know, and it's precisely because you have good taste that you can tell that this is not what I don't like this.
Yeah, man.
And that's the point at which most people give up. And I think, you know, you know, if you can get past that, you know, you then will start to produce things that, you know, meet your taste, and you know, you'll start to be what you want. And I think that the best time to do that, and to not expect so much of yourself in terms of producing things that you hold to a high standard, is definitely when you're younger, when you've not gotten into the whole way of thinking of, my time must be spent, you know, productively. And what does it mean to be productive? It means to be able to have things on my, you know, record that I can make money off, or people can see, or, you know, because the first, you know, year or two of you learning anything new, you're not going to see any of that. And if you expect that, then, you know, you are going to be very perpetually frustrated and disappointed. And that's not fun at all. You know, that's not fun at all to do. So yeah,
with that, it's very inspiring what you say there, because what I'm getting a lot from you, Cam, with what you've said just in this 45 minutes and what we spoke about before, is patience. Really, it's playing the long game. It's like, do not expect to be David Fincher straight away. David Fincher had years and years and years of work, hard work and experience before he even got his name known and stuff like that. I'm sure he's not even happy with what the stuff he does now. You know what I mean? That's why he probably keeps striving to do more. But yeah, it's definitely something we've took in what we're doing is just patience. It doesn't have to happen straight away.
Yeah.
You know, if you rush into things, you're gonna. We spoke about this on last week's episode. You rush into things, you're gonna end up being disappointed with it, and it's like. Yeah. And it's not fun. It's the whole part of the process, and getting there is the fun part. The horrible, frustrating parts are there, but when you look back on them, they're the kind of funny bits where it's kind of like, that made me who I was in this journey. Yeah. So I'm completely with that. And I really appreciate you checking in and coming and speaking to you.
No worries. I don't get to have, you know, these chats very often.
I think I always want to back these chats up with another one, because once we get the first one out the way, we've done our little thing, and then I'd like to do a part 2, mate. I said that to Pete, who we spoke to last week, just so we can go into more depth about your processes and stuff like that, and just maybe add a bit more value for people and stuff. But this has been really great for me, mate. It's nice to get into people's heads and see where they're at and stuff like that. But no, thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Worries,
man. We loved the Blue Skies video. We really did. We can't tell you that enough.
I love the song, so that's why, you know, it exists. So, you know, that's ultimately why. And I forgot to say, you know, something that a point that I wanted to make before was, you know, it's genuinely talking about the creative process. It's the fact that we ended up with that video, to me, is another really. It's really why I love doing what I do, in that you don't always get the outcome that you expect. Yeah. And you know, the process of, you know, doing something creative is continually refreshing. You know, you're not doing the same thing every day, because just like the video that you talked about, it surprised me so much that now the original idea that we had before lockdown, I don't even feel passionately about it.
No.
You know, in regards to this song, at least, it feels to me as though it should have always been what we ended up with.
It's crazy, isn't it? Just takes one big lockdown just to make you realise that you might be doing the wrong thing. So thanks everyone. Thanks Will for giving us that. But yeah, no, you spot on. It's suited the mood of the times, to be fair. That idea before, it does. The song speaks now through the video as well. So yeah, I'm completely with that, mate. And like you said, that's a good point. It's being happy with it. Sometimes the results are the unexpected, because you can see this constant perfection, and it's just going to end up giving you fucking neurosis episodes of like balls of frustration and stuff like that. And it's not good for you. The unexpected is sometimes what the cure, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and I doubt. I mean, I would like to revisit that idea. Definitely that we had before. But I think sometimes, especially, and you'll know this, there's a big, you can sometimes get a bit too hung up on originality and creating something that is almost objectively good in a way. Yeah. I think that you always want to create something that you don't want to create something necessarily because you like it. I mean, I definitely struggle with this. I don't want to create something just because I like it, because I'm clearly biased towards things, because I made it. Yeah. I want something that other people will like, and I want to know that they'll like it objectively. And in the exact same way, I think that the idea that we ended up going with, which was very much based in the time of lockdown, it reflects a lot of the feelings that are happening right now. That's a very subjective idea, because it only really it involves a lot of factors and context that are only happening right now. And I tend to shy away from that a lot. And I actually am really glad that I didn't on this, because I think it being subjective and it being a part of happening in the time that it's happening is important. The context of when you made the thing and what was happening at the time, and how you felt, is just as important as the idea in a lot of ways. And I think additionally it gives it a lot of it makes it feel like the person who made it cared about it.
Yeah, well, exactly. I heard a good thing on what art actually is, and it's I can't remember what book it was that I read, but it made a really good point, saying that art shouldn't be "this is me." It should be "there it is," and that's kind of what I got from this. It's kind of, that's your objective kind of viewpoint to it, is that is how life is, and this is
absolutely.
It's taking it away from the bias, like you say, and stuff like that. It's which is very difficult to do. It's not easy to do that, and that's why a lot of people fail while doing it. But they're the things that speak the most to people, I think, and then change the times, if you want to say that and stuff like that. But man, I really, really do appreciate that. Let's do this again.
No worries, definitely.
Good luck with everything you're doing. And
see you guys.
Hopefully we'll get to work together again soon.
Yeah, I want to chat about the music as well, because that's, like I said, something that I'm getting into, and I'd be quite interested to figure out, more. We've not really talked a lot about that, the whole kind of music production side of things, but that really interests me, as
100%.
How you guys got into that and stuff, and how you formed a lot of your bass knowledge and stuff. Because I can't even play more than 2 chords on a keyboard, so I feel like I've been at it for years.
Patience. That's your term. Patience.
Exactly.
We'd love to do that. We'd 100% love to chat with all that stuff as well. So let's get it booked in and stuff like that. But nice one, mate. Enjoy your driving range.
Right.
Nice one, Cam. Thank you.
See you later.
No worries.
Take care.
See you later.
Bye bye.
See you later.